Chapter 1: Journey to Grandma's. The summer of 2000. I was 17 years old, and I went to the village to visit my grandmother, seeking a break from the hustle and bustle of the city. My grandmother lived in a small village surrounded by dense forest. Near the village was an abandoned children's camp, about which there were always frightening rumors. The locals avoided it, claiming that at night, eerie screams and laughter could be heard. I always thought these stories were made up, not believing in ghosts and other horrors. When I arrived in the village, my grandmother, as always, welcomed me with warm hugs and a delicious dinner. However, during dinner, the conversation turned to the camp, and I decided that I would definitely go there. That night, I went to bed thinking that tomorrow I would be the first from the village to dare to explore the abandoned camp. Chapter 2: Journey to the Abandoned Place. The next day, armed with a flashlight and strong nerves, I set off into the forest where the camp was located. The path was quite long, but my curiosity and excitement kept me going. When I reached the camp, I was met by a rusty metal fence and a sign, on which the word friendship could barely be read. I stood at the entrance and listened. Suddenly, I heard laughter. It was the creepy laughter of a clown. I looked around but saw no one. The laugh echoed again, and I had the feeling that someone was watching me. Despite the fear, I stepped forward, shivering from the cold sweat that trickled down my back. Chapter 3: The Haunted Grounds. The campgrounds were huge, overgrown with weeds and vines, the remnants of a once vibrant place now reclaimed by nature. The air was thick with decay, and the silence was oppressive. The first two buildings I came across were abandoned and dilapidated, windows shattered and doors hanging ajar. As I passed by them, I heard the laugh again, clearer and closer this time. I turned around and froze. A clown stood before me. He was in a dirty and tattered costume, his face covered with grotesque makeup that made his smile look sinister. His eyes were dark pits, and his mouth was painted in a ghastly grin. The clown began slowly approaching me, skipping and laughing in a way that sent chills down my spine. Panic-stricken, I turned and ran, stumbling over roots and debris, his laughter echoing behind me. Chapter 4: The Letter from the Village. When I, out of breath, reached the village, I burst into my grandmother's house and told her everything. But she just laughed, dismissing it as a figment of my imagination. However, from that moment on, I constantly saw the clown in dreams, outside my window at night, in every dark corner. His presence was suffocating, his laughter ringing in my ears, even when I was awake. After a week of terrifying visions, I returned to the city, hoping that all this would be left behind. But a few days later, I received an anonymous letter from the village. The letter was written in blood. "I am waiting for you to play a game." Inside, there was also a circus ticket. I immediately understood that this was the work of that clown. Chapter 5: Confrontation. Unable to escape the haunting memories and relentless visions, I took my father's gun, as he worked in the police, and went back to the village. I knew I had to end this horror once and for all. The journey back was filled with a growing sense of dread, the dark woods seeming to close in around me as I approached the camp. When I returned to the camp, the clown was already waiting for me at the entrance. He stood there, grinning and motioning for me to come inside. I followed him, my heart pounding, my grip tight on the gun. The clown began to tell me that he was one of the camp counselors who kidnapped and killed children here, his voice a chilling whisper that seemed to seep into my bones. We approached the main building, its facade crumbling and windows like dark, empty eyes. On the porch stood a woman from the village store, her smile unnaturally wide. She cheerfully said that we were about to have dinner. The clown vanished into the shadows, and I felt a brief moment of relief, but it was short-lived. The woman brought a plate and a pot, all covered in dried blood. When I opened the pot, I saw blood and something grotesque floating in it. The woman began to call my name loudly, her voice distorting into a scream. Chapter 6: The Deadly Game. I raised the gun and headed towards the woman. She stood there, laughing, and the clown appeared beside her. In a fit of terror, I shot the clown. He laughed maniacally, then fell to the ground, his last words a mocking whisper, "The game is over." The woman let out a blood-curdling scream. then ran off into the darkness. I staggered out of the camp, every shadow seeming to harbor unseen horrors, and returned to the village, hoping that it was finally over. But even as I left, I felt eyes watching me, unseen presences lingering in the darkness. Chapter 7, The End or the Beginning. My life was never the same again. I often thought about what the game was and who those people were. The visions of the clown haunted me day and night. One night, exactly at midnight, I woke up and saw the clown standing in my room. His figure was a dark silhouette against the moonlight, his eyes glinting with malice. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The next morning, my parents found me dead. Written in blood on the wall were the words, "You lost the game." The village never spoke of the camp again, and my story became just another whisper in the wind, a cautionary tale to keep others away from the haunted grounds. The clown still waits, his laughter echoing through the woods, ready to play his deadly game with anyone foolish enough to venture into his domain.